Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today we are joined by Haqeem. He's currently a pilot based out of the Middle East. So today we'll be talking about his experience as a pilot and his journey getting there. Thank you, Haqeem, for being with us today. Could you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Hi guys, thanks for having me on board. I'm Haqeem. I'm from Singapore, ex-AC alumni also. I'm currently working as a 350 first officer in the Middle East. Previously was working in Singapore Airlines through the cadet program, and I crossed over to SilkAir back then when it was still around, flying the 320s for 3.5 years.
Okay. So, Haqeem, could you walk us through how does one become a pilot? Because it's not like your traditional route of going to uni and then getting a job sort of thing, right?
Yeah, so basically, and I'm going to explain in the context of Singapore because obviously, globally, because aviation and flying is it's a global job. That's why you can be moving around and then being based with different companies and joining different companies around the world. But from Singapore, I can put this into two ways. One is the cheap route and the free route, and the other one is the more expensive route where you have to put invest in your training. So if anyone wants to start flying, obviously in Singapore there is the RSAF, the Air Force. That's one, and the other one is Singapore Airlines Group, which they do the fully sponsored cadet program. That means they will pay for your training and you get paid a token allowance for your training. Yep.
So maybe could you just talk about your education and then how it led you to eventually pursue being a pilot? Like a timeline basically.
Okay, so I actually started my aviation career in the Air Force. So during BMT, Air Force came for recruitment talk. I signed up there. I managed to get in, and I continued to join the Air Force, and I started my flying career there. So in the Air Force, the selection process is obviously started with computer tests, and then a medical, and then the interview. And then after that, you have, if for those of you familiar with U Flying Club, so I think in JC or Poly, if you guys join U Flying Club, and you can get a PPL, which is a private pilot's license. So those with private pilot's license, usually they don't have to go for air grading course. So air grading is like another selection, but you actually do the actual flying in Tamworth, Australia. So that's like so-called the final selection. So even though you sign the contract after the interview, there's that selection where it's the most rigorous cut that they'll make. But if you have the PPL, then you bypass that because I think statistically, PPL holders usually pass air grading anyway because they've already got the license. So for me, I didn't have the PPL, so I went through air grading, and then after that, I went through basic wings course, which is like they use the jet at the point of time, the S211 in Pierce, where they train basic military flying. Basically, it's not the platform that you're going to fly. That is just the basic. So you start off there, and after that, if you pass, then you go towards the Air Force has three wings in the three platforms, which is the transport, the helicopters, and the fighters. So after the basic wings, then you go through that. Unfortunately, I didn't make it, or fortunately, I didn't make it. Finishing the course, because I mean, for me, I see it as a blessing in disguise because I started my commercial earlier then. So in the final stage of basic wings, and then after that, so a lot of people may or may not know that in order to join Singapore Airlines, the cadet program, there is this 26-year-old rule. That means you have to be minimum 26 to join the cadet program. Why? Because they want aspiring pilots to join the Air Force. The oldest age to join the Air Force is 27 years old. So obviously, it's military is one of our priorities in Singapore. So and defense is one of our priorities. So obviously, they try to get aspiring pilots to do that. So after that was in 2000, I believe, 8, where I left the Air Force. So I was still young. I wasn't 26 yet. I tried to apply for Singapore Airlines, didn't get a call back. There was an opening. So I decided to just pursue the degree. So most of us, obviously, who joined the cadet program, while waiting after NS, we just pursue a degree. And then I studied in Liverpool University, Aerospace Engineering. And then just nice, I was supposed to do the MNG program, 4 years. But in 2010, my 3rd year, I saw there was an SQ opening. So I was like, I told my dad, I was like, okay, I'm just going to take the risk, just do my bachelor's and not continue my master's and just apply. So he said he's okay. He gave me the blessing. So I applied for SQ. Then just nice, right after graduation, I went for interview and I started cadet program on the same year. So there's no lag in between, just seamless. Yeah.
Wait, you saw like a SQ opening as in like they posted on their website or?
Yeah, so the SQ. So any recruitment I get is always through the website. So you always go to the official airline website and see if there's under the careers tab, whether it's Scoot, SQ, Qatar, Emirates, whatever. You go to the official website because there's a lot of, I think, third-party websites which may or may not be trusted. I think because sometimes they take a cut or there's some dodgy aviation companies where they actually ask potential pilots that, okay, you pay us, we will train you to prepare you for the interview, but you paid so much money, and you don't it's not necessary because like there's no need for that. Yeah, you pay for us, you pay us, and then we give you the computer tests, training, simulator training, and all that. And in the end, if let's say you don't get it, it's just a waste of money, So there are a lot of companies out there who try to snoop people into preparing you for the interview. And you can always prepare an interview by yourself. There's forums. If you talk to people who are already in the industry, what questions can you anticipate? What is the selection process like? And stuff like that. Yeah, which you don't really have to pay for, right? You just source it out online.
I assume there's like hiring seasons, or like, is it quite erratic?
Yes. So obviously it's a cyclical. Now post-COVID, it was like mass hiring. COVID, it was everything stopped. You know what I mean? So like 2008 crash. So that's why I think it was difficult for me after economic crash, right, in 2008. So there was an opening, but I didn't meet the age requirement, so I didn't get called. And then I started my degree. And just nice 2010, really, there was mass recruitment for cadet pilots, Yeah, so it's cyclical. And also the requirements or what type of pilots they need. If let's say the company is expanding so fast, they don't even can't even have the qualified pilots needed to expand the business. So what they do is they get direct entry captains. So let's say for Qatar, for example, or Emirates or the new Riyadh Airlines, they can hire direct entry captains, like even Scoot and Jetstar. So if the company is expanding, they don't, it's not all airlines just take from the bottom up, most legacy airlines, when I meant legacy, the big ones like Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, they all go from the bottom up and take their own cadets. But if the company is expanding and they can't meet the qualified pilots to meet the demand of the expansion, then they just hire direct entry professionals, captains, first officers, straight away, type rated, and just go. Yeah. So it depends on the market, and always any crash in the market, aviation hits first because we are very expensive. The profit margin per seat is only like $15 or something like that. It's very because price of oil, and then like people, if the economy crash, people don't want to travel, like COVID, it was crazy. Yeah, so aviation will always hit first, but once market booms, also aviation will be one of the first to pick up. People need to travel for businesses and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting, Haqeem. I would like to ask you, right? I understand that you studied aerospace engineering at the University of Liverpool.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, how relevant is like a degree to be considered for cadet training? Are there people who join cadet school without a degree, or are there people who like progress up the ladder without a degree at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it just so happens that my interest is in aviation, and the program, I didn't expand on the program. What my degree was is actually aerospace engineering with pilot studies. So in Liverpool, they had a tie-up with Liverpool Flying School, so you can do your license there. So while I did my degree, I did my private license there because I just wanted to fly, So I just continued. I wanted to continue flying. So I got my private pilot's license while studying in Liverpool. But to be honest, the degree itself, I guess, for me, the knowledge is related just on the theory part. I mean, engineering degree is basically just maths. So it's just the mathematics of the mechanics and the physics behind aviation. But for the actual job itself, no, it's not necessary. There are a lot of guys who join the cadet program from various backgrounds. Some ex-medical students, some lawyers, some from the police force, and those who had previous working experience. Some of them did not even have a degree, because at the end of the day, when you start your training, you have to go through ground school, which I think is like 12 papers of various subjects, which is related to flying. You have to study, like for us pilots, you have to study meteorology, load and balance, means some of the big physics behind it. And then after that, it's just really skills based. So, just your hand and motor skills. Yeah. And that's the basic. That's basic flying. After that, you have to obviously once you enter the airline, there's other trainings like decision making skills and stuff like that. Yeah.
So this is for like the cadet school, right? You learn all of this like in the Singapore Airlines Cadet School, the load and balance, all of this.
Correct. Yeah. So but the thing is, this program is generally the same for all over the world, whether you do through Singapore Airlines, because Singapore Airlines has their own school, which is Singapore Flying College, but any other pilot in the world would have to go through the same thing. So it's like basic. I think 10 or 12 subjects. I can't remember really, but you have to do a ground school, and then you do the practical side, which is the actual flying, and then that's it. So that is your license to get your license, because in the airline, if you want to join the airline, you need to have a commercial pilot's license. So this license will allow you to, which is different from the private pilot's license. A private pilot's license will allow you to rent a plane, fly. You can even fly other people, but not earn money. If a commercial pilot's license, you can rent a plane. You can do what do you call it? Bush flying. Yeah. You can even do like bush flying in Australia. Pesticide flying, firefighting, and earn money for that. So that's what commercial pilot's license allow for it. You not necessarily carry passengers. You can do cargo flying or something like that. Yeah. But this is the first step. So in order to work as a pilot, you need to have a commercial pilot's license. Yeah. So and generally everywhere in the world is the same. The ground school and then practical flying, and the subjects are similar also.
So how long was like the?
Is it?
Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. It's okay.
Oh, for the cadet school, is it paid for, or is it full time school?
Yeah. So it's full time. So basically, like I said, so this route, so I can put it in two parts. One is the paid sponsored cadet program, which is Singapore Airlines, and that's the cheapest way. And then the other one is you can pay for your own. So now, I think now there's two different licenses. Like when I mentioned commercial pilot's license, that is not airline type. That means if let's say you whether it's sponsored or not sponsored, let's say you get a license, you can go apply for any other airline or any company to work. There is another license called the multi-crew pilot's license. Usually that is airline tied, and this license is usually the flying school has ties with the airlines. At the completion of the multi-crew pilot's license, you immediately get a job, whether you pay for it or not. For example, Singapore Airlines have Singapore Flying College, and Singapore Airlines have have Scoot, which is under the group, and Singapore Airlines the main line, right? So in Scoot, because the financial setup and the business setup is a low cost, you can join Scoot as a cadet pilot, but you have to pay for your own. And they go through the MPL program. And nowadays also Singapore Airlines go through the MPL program. So if you get selected, if let's say you go for a Singapore Airlines interview and you get hired for Singapore Airlines, you'll be sponsored. So both let's say both cadets go to the same flying school, Singapore Flying College, same program. But after they finish their basic flying training and the ground school, they go back to their individual airlines and do the type rating there, which is if let's say Scoot, you can fly 78 and 320, and then Singapore Airlines, I think you start off in whatever fleet, 737 or 330, whichever fleet they have for second officers. So basically, the difference is just cost, yeah. And the difference between MPL and but with MPL, you can only work for that airline because when you their syllabus is based on the airline's training, the multi-crew pilot's license. But for commercial pilot's license, if you pay for your own, you can even go to Singapore Flying College and say, okay, I want to go and pay for a CPL. Okay, they'll train you. Same school, you pay for your own, you get commercial pilot's license, but now you have the freedom to apply for Jetstar, for example, which doesn't have a cadet program. So so I can go to Jetstar, I can even go to Singapore Airlines, you can even go to Scoot, but at the end of the day, you're a free man, but obviously you paid for it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how much is the cost of like the commercial pilot license if you want to do it yourself?
Okay, so it's at my time it's about and varies between schools and countries. So each country has their own aviation authority, right? And for example, if you do in Australia, and each aviation authority have although all countries subscribe to ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, but each country or region, like for example, in Europe, they have the EASA, and in America, they have FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Authority. So although the training is all similar, but you cannot, it's not necessary that you can convert the license just like that. It depends on the governing body of the country. So for example, if I take my license in Singapore, I want to go to Australia, even though I fly 20 years, I have to take the whole ground school again because they do not allow one-to-one conversion of a Singapore license to a aviation license. So the cost varies for different schools, and in Singapore, it's roughly about 150 to 200,000. Yeah. So I mean, and during my time in Singapore Flying College was about there, about that's the cost roughly.
And how long is the cadet school?
So actually, the ground school is I think just a few months, like probably 6 months, and then the actual flying training was about 1 year. So it's about from the day you enter ground school to you finish is maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years, something like that, depending on the aircraft availability and the number of students that they have here.
Okay. You mentioned like type rating. Could you explain a bit about that?
Okay, so type rating is after you get your commercial license, you have a license to fly as a pilot to get money. Now, in the airlines, they have jet aircraft where you need to be specifically trained for that aircraft. You need to know how to handle the aircraft in normal situations, emergencies. So that is called type rating. It's just, for example, like I need to have another license or tag to my license to drive a BMW. And if I want to fly a Mercedes, I have to get another license, tag to my license to drive a Mercedes. So in the airlines, the type rating is the aircraft type specific training for you to qualify to operate that aircraft. So in the sponsored program, everything is covered, but obviously you'll be bonded. In the non-sponsored program, like for example, I know Scoot, you have to pay for your type rating, but partially, because it's quite expensive. I think like 50,000 for, let's say, a 320 type rating. So, and I think so the scheme was you pay 20,000 upfront and 30,000 paid by the company, and then they'll deduct from the salary throughout the bond period. I think it's 5 years or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so regarding the type rating, will you be flying an A350 for the rest of your career, or do you plan on? Is there any plan to like shift over to another kind of plane?
I mean, I'm happy on the 350. It's the latest Airbus aircraft. But it really depends on company needs. Like, so when I joined Qatar, I was flying the 330, and then after 4 years, I think it's just after 2 years, I get a call to. I mean, I was transferred to 350 because that's where the demands is. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why you don't want to fly to a newer and better aircraft. But it's all different on personal preference. Like some people, like for example, if you fly the smaller aircraft, the 320, for example, you do like turnarounds, right? Basically just 2 sectors. Turnarounds is like you don't lay over, you don't stay there. So you fly, let's say you short sectors like fly from Singapore to KL and then KL back to Singapore, right? You don't stay over. So in the small aircraft, you can work like 4 or 5 days in a row doing this Singapore KL, Singapore, and then Singapore Penang, Singapore, So, and it's just personal preference. Some people like that because they sleep in their own bed at night, Some people prefer the long haul flights because for the same number of hours, but you work less days, right? Because you have to fly, let's say, to America, lay over 1-2 nights, and then fly back. And that takes up the bulk of your flying time. So you fly like 3-4 times a month, and the rest of the days off. But obviously, you'll be away from family that 2-3 days. So it depends. Depends on personal preference. But usually, the companies prefer that you take whatever offer they give you. I mean, if the need is there, because obviously you're still an employee, right? Yeah. So it's not much of like yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's not much like. It's not much you have a choice. You have a choice, but it's just not nice. I mean, it's just operational reasons that they need pilots. You go. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But you mentioned like you had to pay yourself to get the type rating.
No, it depends on the airline. So like example, if you join Singapore Airlines, for example, then after the cadet program, you just naturally follow the training progression. You go join, let's say for example, the 777. So you from the cadet, you start your training as a second officer in the 777. So once you get type rating, you'll be on your license. It says Boeing 777. That means you are legally allowed to fly on the right hand seat on the 777. Yeah, so you do the simulator. So the type rating is just basically simulator and ends up with like a circuit, like just a touch and go, a short training flight, and then you'll be legally allowed to fly on the right hand seat because but you're still a second officer because you're still under training. You still need to know like airline procedures, experience on the station. So there's still a training program in the second officer, but in the eyes of the law, you are qualified to operate in the right hand seat. So that's what the type rating is. It's basically to qualify you for the aircraft type and with passengers on board, operating the aircraft. Yeah. But so that's but if let's say if you go like some other airlines, Scoot or Jetstar, you may have to pay for your own type rating. Or it depends. Let's say if they really need pilots, the company will have to sacrifice and like, okay, I need pilots now. Let's say I'm flying the 350, right? And I want to apply for Airline X, which is like Boeing, for example. Then I want to join, but they said, okay, they are really desperate for pilots. Okay, we pay for your type rating. So it depends on the airline and the economic conditions at that point of time. So it's not necessary that you have to pay for your type rating. We are blessed in Singapore that actually it's quite structured. We have Singapore Airlines, we have Scoot. Traditionally, I met pilots. They start off really rank and file, get their license, they do a bit of bush flying, and then they join a flying school and be instructor just to clock up the hours. And then after that, they pay for their own type rating. Let's say at CAE or all these, there's all simulator companies which accepts, it's just business, right? It's just their business to train pilots. So you just pay for your own type rating. So you can go to the airline and say, hey guys, I got 320 type rating. I want a job. So it's just job searching from there. So these other countries are like that. This is the traditional. So by the time they actually join the airline, they can be like 40, 50 years old. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm actually really most curious about like even for the same type ratings, right? Okay, so first, if for like different type ratings, is the salary different because of like the different skill set needed? And also between like let's say within the same so-called company, right? Singapore Airlines, Scoot, used to be Silk Air also. Is there like differences in the pay or the hours?
Okay, so it really depends on the company. For example, where I am now, whether you fly the narrow body or the wide body is standard salary, standard basic if you're a captain, standard basic if you're a first officer, standard because we also get so we have a basic salary and then hourly flying pay, our allowance, flying allowance. So that's also another bulk of our salary. So in this company where I am now, it's the same. Doesn't matter which fleet you're on, it's the same. In another company, like back, you have different salaries. I think in Singapore Airlines, the 380, the largest aircraft that they have, you have another different salary. But it all depends on the airline, really. Yeah. I'm not sure if Scoot has any difference because they have two types of now three types: Embraer, 320, and the 787. And the only wide body I have is 787. But I'm not sure if they have differences in salary for the wide bodies and the narrow bodies.
Okay. I wanted to know, is there any difference between flying like Boeing and Airbus? I'm not sure if you've flown Boeing before, but is there any? What is the difference?
Okay, so basically the basic concept of flying is still the same you carry from a flying school. There's an engine, there's thrust, and there's controls, and you can basically fly anything. It's just the principle. I've never flown Boeing, so I really cannot comment on the specifics, but from what I know, it's a different philosophy of okay, for just physically, the Airbus has a side stick, which is just like a computer game. Really, it's like just computer game, and Boeing has a yoke, which is like in front of you. So so structurally, physically, there's different, and in terms of I think abnormal situations, the way Boeing designed the aircraft and the way Boeing intend for the pilots to deal with the situation is different from the Airbus. Like Airbus is really guides you and there's a lot of information, but Boeing is more like, okay, secure that malfunction, and after that is your own decision. It's that's just the gist of it. Yeah. So basically, but based on pure flying, it's the same. It's you have just wings, engine, and controls, and that's all you need really. But it's just that obviously in a more advanced aircraft, airline aircraft, there's a lot of other systems here. Hydraulic system, you got the electrical system, and just dealing with the emergencies and the abnormalities is just different. Yeah.
Okay, now that we've talked about how to like become a pilot, let's move on to how is it like to actually be like a pilot itself. So if you could tell us a bit about the sort of career progression of a pilot, that'd be great.
Yeah. So you can always stick to one airline. I mean, that's just normally what Singaporeans would do, right? Like because but generally it's still the same. You start off as a cadet, or if you get your own license, you join the company as a second officer. Now, when I say second officer, it's also company related. The rank does not matter. Basically, it's just the guy on the right. So some companies, when you join, you're junior first officer. Some companies, when you join, you're already the first officer, because legally, in the eyes of the law, you are able to operate the aircraft. You already gone through the simulator. You already know how to handle the emergencies. you are type rated, right? So legally, you are able to join. You are a first officer. Whether they call you senior first officer, junior first officer, second officer, doesn't matter. But that's the entry level that you join. And then that is one set of group, which is on the right-hand seat. You gain your hours. So basically, you gain your hours, and then you get something which is called the Air Transport Pilot's License. That will give you legality to operate on the left-hand seat as a commander, as a captain. Yeah. So, and that just really requires a number of sectors. When I say sectors, is the number of takeoff landings. So, let's, for example, I take off from Singapore, fly to KL. That's one sector. So there is a hour requirement. That means like I fly from KL to Singapore 1 hour. I have to have 2,000 of those flights to get 2,000 hours. So usually to get to ATPL, it's like 1,500 hours, and I think 500 hours in a couple of sectors. It also depends on the authority of that country. So, but generally it's about there. Once you get to ATPL, and it's just seniority. How long you're in the company, when your time is right, the guy on the left retires, the amount the company is expanding, I'm buying new aircraft, I need more commanders. There's really, aviation is all about time and space, really. So time and space, if there is a opportunity for you to move to the left, then you move to the left. Yeah, and then usually the airline will train you to be a commander. Yeah, so that is the one progression. So for me, when I joined, so I started off with Singapore Airlines as a cadet. I was hired to be a Singapore Airlines pilot. After we finished our CPL, I think in 2012, the type rating part slowed down. So there were like 60 cadets of the finish our CPL, but when we went back to Singapore after our training, we weren't needed yet to fill in the numbers in the 777. So I was it was a bit delayed, the training, and we were just distributed in various departments in Singapore Airlines to help out various departments like planning and stuff like that. That's when Silk Air, which was still the subsidiary, I mean it's the same stuff idea, they decided to open up positions for some of us, the cadets who are waiting for 320. So that's when I decided to join Silk Air for the 320, and I flew there 3.5 years as a second officer, because I already completed my CPL, right? So I joined there, I started second officer training. So I did my type rating. Second officer training is about 1 year only, less than that for 320. And after that, I become first officer. It's just ranking, but I was operating on the seat. Basically, you're not flying you don't need to fly with an instructor, right? So because once you're a captain, you can be an instructor, which basically you're teaching type rating, like you can do the simulators, you can train the guy on the right. And once I become first officer, I can fly with normal captains who are not instructors. So basically they are just operating captains of an airline. Because you don't need to be, as a captain, you not necessarily be an instructor. You don't have to teach. All you have to do is just operate the aircraft safely from point A to point B. And that's where a qualified first officer is job, the role is. And then LinkedIn message came for a roadshow for this Middle East airline, and I decided to take a peek. And looking at the package and weighing the pros and cons, I paid my bond in Silke and I went over. Yeah.
Wait, so the progression is like second officer, first officer, then captain.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So or junior first officer, captain, depending on whatever the airline calls it. But basically, a second officer and junior first officer is usually under training. You are flying with an instructor to familiarize yourself with the company policies and company operations. Because each airline, that's for example, you fly a 320, the 320 itself is the same as any 320 around the world. But companies can introduce a policy which is obviously a bit more safe, or certain policies which they need because of certain incidents, or which is more prevalent in the company or in that region. And you do the line training, we call it line training after your simulator, with an instructor to familiarize yourself with the company policies. Yeah. So that's where you, yeah.
Yeah, so on the right hand side, the right
Yeah.
seat is like the
Yes.
sort of junior pilot,
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
and the left seat is
Right.
the usually more senior one, who is like
Yes.
captain.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not. It's always the first officer, junior pilot, in the right hand seat, and then I wouldn't say junior because let's say if you join another company, right? Let's say you join another company, you're a junior in that company. Let's say in terms of hours, you can be the most experienced. Let's say after you finish Singapore Airlines like 10 years, and then you join, let's say another airline, and that airline has like after some airlines, let's say for example Scoot or the low cost carriers, because you fly a lot of sectors, you can become captain in 4 years. So let's say you join that airline, you are 10 years experience on the right hand seat, but the captain is only 4 years experience. It can happen. Yeah, but the captain's role is more important because he is delegated to be responsible for the aircraft. So yeah, in terms of experience, you can have that situation, but generally, if you stay within the same airline, obviously the captain has more experience, and then the first officer has less experience. That's generally the case, but it can happen if, let's say, you are in a company where there's a lot of hiring from other airlines, then that could be the case also.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious about like I know there's something called management pilots, right? So what actually are they? Like what do they do?
Okay, so after you become captain, there is some pilots, because it's just like a normal department in a company, because it's just a company structure. So you have obviously finance, HR, and then we have most companies, we have this thing called all airlines will have this flight operations. So usually flight operations is headed by a pilot because he understands what it's like to operate the aircraft, right? So management pilot is those who deal or manage the whole of operations, the flight operations itself. And then there's different, under flight operations, you can have different heads of the fleet. For example, if let's say an airline has like 4 fleets, Boeing 777, 330, 350, and then you have the chief pilot for 777, you have a chief pilot for 787. So these are management pilots. They can deal with like, okay, even not stuff related flying, like, if you want to have off days, sick leave, you have a personal issue, you have you want to bring up something, you have a boss which you can speak to about your grievances or whatever issues that you have, but generally they manage obviously that the manpower stuff, the pilots, and also the operations. And there's also like there's head of safety or head of training. Yeah, so these are management pilots, which is basically just running the day-to-day stuff for the airline in that flying aspect. Yeah, but in the flight itself, the captain is the overall authority. Yeah, even the management pilot cannot say anything. Whichever decision that he makes it for that particular flight. So a captain is a manager of that particular flight on that particular day. Yeah, but when you say management pilot, it's usually they sit in the office. So after a certain point of time, you have senior enough, and then you become management pilot. You don't fly that much because most of the time you're in the office. So you have to have currency. All pilots, you have to have currency. Like, I think 3 takeoff and landing in 90 days, something like that. So every month they get planned 1 or 2 flights just to keep current. But most of the time they'll be in the office. Yeah.
Okay, Haqeem, I want to ask you about your bond, because you said that you left Silk Air or Singapore Airlines to join Qatar. So for you, was that a really big jump? Was it a hard decision to make, or was it just like a spur of the moment? Just follow your dreams.
Obviously, yeah. So the bond was a big thing, obviously, and I couldn't have done it myself. Obviously, I had to speak to my family, especially my parents, because I told them that, and I had no dream of just leaving Singapore, because you're in your national carrier, everything's paid for. My cousin was already working in the Middle East as an engineer, And he was telling me the perks, the travel benefits, the schooling allowance for the kids. And I only even tinker with the idea is because I got the message from LinkedIn to an invitation to go for the recruitment talk. So I went for recruitment talk. I took at it. I spoke to my cousin, and to be honest, I just went for the interview to see my standing in the global market. Because if in Singapore, you're just in Singapore, right? Like you know your worth in Singapore. But I want to see how I fare in overseas. So I just went there to see. Went for the interview. They actually flew us to the Middle East for the interview. Did a simulator check, everything, and I spoke, but because the bond was still at the back of my head while I'm doing this, right? So I'm like thinking, how much do I have to pay? How do I get to pay? So I spoke to my parents about it. Then my parents said, they encouraged me actually. They said, just go, yeah, just go. And then if you get it, then we can speak about the bond. If not, then there's nothing to speak about, right? I said, the worst case scenario, I just carry on with Silkair / Singapore Airlines. So I went for it. I got it, and then my parents helped me out. Yeah, they managed to. They have some cash for that. So and the good thing was it's nothing against SQ Silk Air. They understood the reason why I want to leave, because at that point of time also career progression, salary, it's all competition, and we didn't leave on a bad note. I didn't leave on a bad note. I didn't pay the bond and just left, right? So it was everything is we left on a good terms. They understand why I wanted to leave, and I paid the bond. It was a clean break, and even the chief pilot was saying, if anytime you want to come back, it's I'm welcome, and I appreciate that. Yeah. But having said that, making the move here, also I'm happy. And my parents are happy now. Obviously, they get to fly the Q suite. So they get to fly business class, and a lot of people benefited from my employment here. My family, friends, yeah. So I think it's a good move here.
Speaking about payments, I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask the big money question.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the sort of salary ranges that you have from let's say the most junior, and then see how it progresses upwards as you promote?
Yeah. So in the Middle East, right? Because you don't own property here, or actually you can own property. You get your basic, you get your flying, and then you get a housing allowance if you're not staying in company accommodation, right? So now I'm only 7 years in here with housing allowance. It's almost about 18 to 19 thing. Yeah. So then obviously with the rent, but obviously where you stay affects what you want to pay, right? So it's a lifestyle choice. You can, if they say they give you the housing allowance and you want to use all your housing allowance to stay in a fancy place, then it's your choice. But if you can find somewhere where its rental is cheaper, then that's good. You can have extra pocket money inside, right? Yeah. So and there's no tax, so you pay zero tax. So there's a lot of savings which I can benefit from here. Singapore Airlines, I think now, so I could earn, and this is not, I think, not just comparing me to captains in Singapore Airlines or pilots in Singapore Airlines. Even within Singapore Airlines, like I said, remember, different fleet have different salary. Yeah, so from what I heard, now some FOs can get, let's say, a narrow body captain's salary. So that's just within the company itself. Yeah, so yeah, that's the range. Obviously, like I said, because it's tax free, you earn, if once they introduce tax in the Middle East as income tax, then maybe it's not lucrative to stay here. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Are you also paid by the flight, or is it
Yeah.
a monthly?
No. So we get it's a monthly salary, or we get the salary monthly. But it's just that they take in consideration the previous month's flying hours. For example, I fly 85 hours or 88 hours, whatever, right? And then you have a basic, and then you have the allowance, which is your flying allowance, and then you get transport allowance and all other perks, transport allowance, utility allowance, and then what do you call this? The housing allowance. Yeah. So this is what you get, and when you lay over, you get like lunch, breakfast, dinner allowance based, and that varies based on the station. Yeah. So the total package now between 16 to 19 depends on a good month, when meaning like the amount of flights I fly. Yeah, so 16 to 19 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to follow up on the salary question because
Yeah.
you're pretty senior now, right? I would think like 7 years in the Middle Eastern airline, and then you probably had some experience in Singapore Airlines as well. So I was
Yeah.
just wondering, like the salary range from when you first finished the Singapore Airlines Cadet School and how it progressed like year on year, like so year and year, and then after that, with a promotion, how much did it increase by?
Okay, so um in Silk, I probably take home probably about I can't remember the increment, but in Qatar, like there's a 3% increment every year for the first 5 years, and after that 5%, I think. Yeah, that's what I remember. To be honest, I don't really keep track, but this is what I remember. This is like my current airline. But in Silk, I can't remember the increment, but I know like even when I did quite heavy flying, I probably take home. I think this with CPF also probably about 9. Yeah, yeah. So it's quite significant. Yeah, difference. Yeah. I mean, it's just because you see, like, the Middle East, they have to attract people to come, right? So they have to attract people to come. So they have to pay good money and good benefits. Yeah, whether it's Qatar, Emirates, and now the new airline Riyadh, which is entering the Gulf competition. Yeah, they have to pay good salary in order to attract pilots. Yeah. So yeah, so that's yeah. So the most junior is I would say Wuja, but it's average is like that. So in Singapore it's about 9, 10, and then like here it's like 16. You know, yeah, it's quite something. Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned like the previous month's flight hours also plays a part. So I
Yeah.
assume flight hours are the like hours where they start counting when the door closes, from what I heard.
Okay. So the actual definition is when the uh, aircraft is pushed, start moving for the purpose of taking off, and when the aircraft has parked with the engine shut down. So basically, it's block time. So off blocks when the aircraft starts pushing back, and when you park and the engine shut down, that is the block time. So you get paid that block time, for example. So I've like say a typical flight to LA is probably 15, 16 hours. Yeah. When I push back from Doha all the way to I land and then parked at Los Angeles. So that's the particular block time, and that's where you get paid. Yeah. So there's some limits to that. So obviously it cannot work you like crazy. Yeah. So that's when, but you get paid per hour based on the block time. Flight time is when you actual takeoff and landing. So that's so the block time is where you push back and chocks on. Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Block time as in so if a particular flight has a lot of tailwind and your flight time decreases, you don't get paid less, right? You get paid the same amount, right?
No, you get paid the actual time that you are flying, so you get paid less. Yeah.
Oh, serious? So if
Yeah.
there's okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get paid. Yeah, but it's
Oh,
generally it's not like it's like a lot of difference. It's just like there's a lot of tailwind. Yeah, I know some and the tailwind varies in different parts throughout the year, right? So especially in winter, it's like the tailwind is super strong. So it's like you just pay it based on the block time, but you don't purposely fly slow because of that or anything, because you just fly as per normal and you just get you accept whatever you get. Yeah.
Okay. I think I also have a question on, having been a pilot for so long, right? What is the most interesting country that you've visited?
Interesting. It's interesting that I'm not a person who actually likes to go out from layovers, because sometimes the layover is pretty short. It's just 24 hours. So you just go there just to rest, eat. Because the bulk of my duty is at home because I got 6 kids. So I'm pretty busy over here. So my layovers are there to recuperate. But having said that, like, when I do go out, it's interesting. Like, the Asian countries are nice. I mean, because they're familiar with Asia. Europe is pretty nice. Yeah, actually, I fly to Africa also. Africa is pretty cool. Yeah, so I don't really have a particular place, but a lot of the pilots, they like the countries which like resort like Zanzibar, Bali, where you just can enjoy the beach while you're having layover, and it's really like a paid vacation. Yeah, so that's what most of the guys I fly with they really like. Yeah. So I think the layovers, which has like a beach vibe to it, a lot of the pilots, I enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I was also wondering about like the behind the scenes of a pilot. So, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows you fly the plane, right? But what happens like before and after the flight? Is there like any other reports you guys have to write, or I don't know, flight plans or anything you have to discuss?
Yeah. So actually, yeah, a lot of guys just think that the autopilot is the one which is flying, but actually there's a lot of work pre and post. I wouldn't say there's a lot, but there's still which need to be done. So I start, obviously reporting time is 1 hour 15 minutes at the operation center, but you start reading the flight plan early. Sometimes I start preparation before I look at the previous day flight plan. So for us pilots, we look at weather, NOTAMs, which is notice to airmen, which is basically information about the airport on that particular day, runways closure, taxiway closure, just to preempt ourselves, any information there. And then I look at the route where we are heading, whether I'm flying over the pole, whether I'm going through restricted, prohibited areas. Like, for example, we fly through Iraq, any certain peculiarities that we need to think about in consideration. And these are all considerations about what if something happens. So if, let's say, I fly, thankfully I fly to most places already. So it makes the job just refreshing some information. But if, let's say, I'm flying to a new destination, I have to, the night before, I read up on, okay, what are the peculiarities about the airport? What can I expect? So there's company information about that. Talk to some guys, talk to the pilots on my previous flights. Hey, have you been to this destination? So this is all about preparing yourself, and the over preparation is always good for in flying, because the more information you know, that the more prepared you have, you can anticipate. Like, okay, for example, even to the things like, okay, this is what they say, and this is what they mean, because different ATCs throughout the world also say different things, and peculiarities. Although it's quite generally, we have a standard phraseology, but some countries, they, like in America, they're a bit more relaxed, and not really standard. But that's what I do. So so the night before, if especially I'm going to a place where I'm not familiar with, I look at that notes, flight plan of the previous day. and see how the routing is, any particular thing. On the day itself, we report and we discuss with the captain, like, okay, this is the NOTAMs, this is the weather. Weather is good. Okay, weather is bad. Okay, maybe we can consider taking extra fuel, just to hold, just in case, if it's not already planned in the flight plan. And that's it. Then we go for the flight. In flight, we after the bulk of the work is preparing for the takeoff. We key in the flight plan, the FMS, which is the computer on board, and then throughout the flight we monitor. We keep thinking about what if something happens. Like now, where do we go? So this is always constant. It's not, the autopilot is there just to maintain the flight parameters in a steady flight. Other than that, we're always thinking, okay, we're talking to ATCs, or we're transferring to the next ATC, because we're going through different countries, right? So we always get switched over to a different ATC, anticipating, okay, if let's say now I have engine failure, where do I go? I have a decompression. I'm over the Alps. I'm over the Himalayas. Is there an escape routing? Because you need to descend to 10,000 feet, but then 10,000 feet in the Alps is like 20,000 feet. So you cannot descend there. So there is a escape routing which the company has already prepared, to follow. So these are the work that actually needs to be done. And post-flight is basically just the report. If there's any abnormality in flight, like let's say there's a medical situation, so we just put it in our report to submit to the company. So it's just for statistics purposes and stuff like that. But that's just the day-to-day flight. But being a pilot, you're always checked. We always need to constantly update ourselves with the new company policy. Sometimes there's an incident happen, the company will have to change the policy or introduce a certain procedure just to prevent that from happening again. So we always update ourselves with the manuals. Once in a while, we read it in flight. But every 6 months, we go for a simulator check. So we have to, it's just to check your competency for the license verification. And then every year we go for a medical checkup, and every year we do a line check, which is basically an instructor would fly in a normal flight. It's just a normal flight, but sorry, it's not a normal flight, but okay, from the passenger's point of view, it's a normal flight. They'll see 3 pilots and be like, why are there 3 pilots, like for a short flight, and basically just an instructor who's just making sure that, okay, your operations are okay, and then he'll grade you accordingly. Yeah, so it's constant exams. Yeah, every 6 months. Yeah, and so that's the thing is, being a pilot, you have to consider that you're not just once you finish training and you be in the right hand seat, or even if you're a captain, you can rest on your laurels. It's always preparation every day, every flight, and especially the simulators every 6 months. Yeah. So it's but having said that, it's quite rewarding, lah. I mean, like you enjoy the view from the cockpit. Salaries are pretty decent, and yeah.
Speaking of your what you do post and pre-flight, I want to ask, how is the working hours as a pilot? How often do you fly per month, and are there lull periods or on periods?
Yeah. So okay. So each airline, there is generally the authorities have a standard format where you cannot bust. So because you cannot, because in our line of work is purely based on safety, right? Because the pilot is there for safety, the cabin crew is there for safety. So you cannot have tired and then you are traveling, go to the west, different time zones, you'll be tired naturally because we're all humans, right? So there is certain limits where generally the ICAO or International Civil Aviation Authority has, which is we have our limit of 100 flying hours, the block time, within 28 days. So depending on the aircraft type that you fly, the narrow body. So when the narrow body is less seat, the smaller planes, they fly shorter range, right? Because they cannot fly to the US, for example. They fly, let's say, I don't know, nearby, Muscat, Dubai. And then the wide body guys, we fly all the way to the US, for example, and that's 15 hours, right? And if we have flights to the US, let's say one flight there, one flight back, that's already 30 hours for one duty, right? So you fly 3, 90 hours already. So that's it. You're already almost the limit. So you fly 3 flights and the rest of the days are off. Yeah. So that's preference, right? So some guys, the narrow body guys, some guys, but for the same amount of hours, you fly to a destination which is nearby. It's only 1 hour. You have to fly how many how many flights? Like 80 hours to get your 80 hours. You can fly 5 days in a row, 6 days in a row. Or within 1 day, because it's short, right? You can fly there and back, there and back. So the workload is a bit more, even though you're flying smaller, because the preparation is still the same. You have to prepare the box, you fly there, you land, and then when you land there, you have to prepare the box and fly back on the same day. Like if you flying the white body, you prepare the box, you land, you rest. The next day, same, you prepare the box, you prepare the aircraft, fly there, and you but and it takes up, and that's 30 hours. But if you fly the narrow body, the 1 day you only do the same amount of work, 20 hours. Sorry, 2 hours. Yeah. So that's why generally speaking, most pilots eventually aspire to fly the wide body aircraft, and that's usually the major airlines, right? Like Singapore Airlines, Scoot, Lufthansa, yeah. So that's what people generally aspire to, like when you start your aviation career, and especially like the traditional guys, the ones who are based in Europe or US or Australia, those rank and file guys from bush flying to instructor, and then they join a narrow body and then the wide body. Because like back in Singapore, actually you're quite blessed, because if let's say you join the cadet program, you can straight to the wide body immediately. Yeah.
Okay. For like those longer flights or like flights in general, do you guys
Yeah.
get like stipulated like off days when you like fly to another country, or like
Yeah.
how does it work?
So okay, so for my company, I think there's a minimum local base of days that you need in a month. Probably I think it's like 8 or 9, and then you can have your off days overseas, but locally you must have 8 or 9. And what happens is, like, okay, for my company, usually we can bid for off days. Like as I was telling you, you can bid for flights, you can bid for off days, and the system, as much as they can, they will try to give you your bids. If not, there's a satisfaction rate. If you don't get it for 2 months, the third month will the high probable chance that you'll get whatever you requested for, whether it be it off days or flight destinations. In previous in the other company, in my old company, there's obviously it's unionized, so they have, I think, certain criteria that if you fly a certain amount of hours, you have to have a longer rest. But that's just a company, and it's not a legal thing, because legally, generally, people can have minimum rest, like before flying again. Like you can even like fly to the US and literally 12 hours later you can fly back. Yeah, that's legal, but obviously company obviously gives more. Yeah. So amount of off days, like for example, if let's say you have a 3 US flights, then let's say the rest of the month, basically that takes up like 9 days in the calendar month, and the rest of it is just off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. There's a lot of off days per month.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
So I was also wondering if maybe there were some situations on the flights when you perhaps felt some kind of dangers or problems.
Okay, so always like I said, as a pilot, you are trained to always be thinking ahead about the what if scenarios. Yeah, there were some incidents. I mean, like, but we are trained for that. You can always, I mean, there will always be black swan scenarios. Like, for example, we heard about the Hudson River, Sully. Those scenarios when we cannot train for. But what we are trained for is the methodology at which our thought process. What do you do at that point of time? So we always thought like fly the aircraft first, navigate, and then communicate. Like basically, make sure the aircraft is flying. We need to know where we're going. Forget about everything else, and then you tell other people. So there. I mean, for me, thankfully, there wasn't any like situations where you require immediacy. But there are like certain situations, and it's not particularly like aircraft related. It can be passengers. There are pilots are also managers of people. So like unruly passengers like molesting other passengers. What do you do? Do you divert now, or what do you do? Cabin crew also is there to help you handle the situation. Or passengers having a heart attack. These are things which you think about, and that's why throughout the flight, you always have to prepare yourself, give yourself options as quickly as possible, and be mentally prepared where you want to go if something happens at that particular time. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I want to ask you before you wrap up, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows what happened 5 years ago during COVID. How were you personally affected by the whole situation?
Yeah, so obviously the airlines was the toughest to be hit. A lot of the guys in Singapore Airlines, I mean, a lot of people, airlines are grounded. Amazingly, my airline is always flying, and we generated quite a good revenue from during that period. But having said that, it was pretty tough because obviously we worked a bit extra because we were the only airline flying. We had obviously everywhere also we had salary cut. But it's not about the money or the amount of work. It's about unable to see your family because you're based overseas. So it was a tough period for my family because we are away from our parents. There was no traveling. Everywhere was crazy. Even when I was flying during COVID, you have to adhere to the regulatory requirements of the particular country, and it's less stringent in the West, like America, and it's particularly crazy in Far East and even Australia. You have to be escorted, with the police. You have to get your food. You have to wait for the guy to leave before you take your food. The kind of thing. But the US is really just no restrictions. It was like land of the free, right? Yeah. So, but having said that, like it's just like it's mostly for the family. Like we haven't met our parents for 2-3 years. And then when COVID finally lifted and the country started to allow visitors in, then obviously my parents and my wife, my in-laws came almost immediately. Yeah, that'll be good. So that's the tough part was being away from family, and that's the sacrifice that you make being overseas, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the podcast today. But before you
worries.
leave, even if it isn't too much to ask, can you do like the pilot voice? When you guys land, you guys will
Oh my
say,
god.
"Oh, hello, we have just landed in Changi Airport at 6:57 a.m.
Yeah.
The skies are sunny, and welcome home."
Usually it's more funny if you do the American, like, very good good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is you couldn't even hear anything. Like they mumble everything. Yeah. Okay, like all right, ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded the podcast with Sean, Joel, and Aiden. Thank you for flying with ACS.
Whoa, okay. That's incredible, man. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you have enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and follow us on our socials on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify in the links in the description down below. See you in the next video.